Love Takes Flight is a pretty good film. I really enjoyed this. It took me a couple of minutes to get into it, but once the narrative was established and I worked out what was going on, I found it to be really moving. One of the characters didn't necessarily have the best behaviour a lot of the time, sometimes understandably, sometimes not so much, but nevertheless, I did enjoy this. This was released in 2019. It's directed by Stephen R. Monroe and written by Eric Brooks. And this stars Nikki Deloach as Dr. Lizzie Beauman, Jeff Hephner as Charley, Skylar Olivia Flanagan as the young Quinn, and Thon as Walter Allen. And initially, Lizzie and her young daughter bump into Walter, and Quinn is a very charming character. She said hello old person or hello old man, I can't remember exactly. Obviously her mother told her not to do that, but immediately it was a charming introduction, and we learn that Walter is quite a lonely individual. They bump into him again a little later on, and they decide to have a tea party because Quinn wants to have a tea party. So Liz and Quinn go over to his house, and that in itself is very sweet. But then things get a bit more complicated because it turns out, by a huge coincidence, that Walter is the father of the pilot that has just been hired at the hospital where Lizzie works. In fact, she was in charge of hiring the pilot, and they didn't exactly get off to the best of starts. And I have to say, Lizzie's attitude towards him maybe wasn't the best, but to be fair, neither was Charley's. He seemed a little bit too confident, Lizzie seemed a little bit too abrasive. So they didn't have the best of starts, but obviously with Lizzie and Quinn now spending time with Walter, she has to spend time with Charley outside of work, and we get to know them all better. And of course it's about their relationship developing, and also Walter maybe finding a new lease on life with the help of young Quinn, because we learn that things have not been easy for him recently. I won't go into too much detail, but it's very, very moving, very heartbreaking at times, but Quinn is giving him this new purpose, and obviously spending time with Lizzie, and he seems to be spending more time with his son as a result of this, and it's so lovely to see. We also have some beautiful music in this, because Quinn is learning to play the piano, and she's playing A Heart and Soul, which I absolutely adore. So that crops up quite a few times, and I really rather enjoyed it. So everything is really beautiful, really well done. The only issues I have, and they're not really issues, but I feel like Lizzie is sometimes not a very likeable character. And as I alluded to before, sometimes I can understand why she responds to things so negatively a lot of the time. Sometimes I feel like she's acting unreasonably. And that meant that there were times when I wasn't really her fan. I didn't love her, but not to the point where it affected my enjoyment of the narrative. It is still a really sweet, moving film. I promise you, you will not have completely dry eyes as you watch this. It's not a devastating film. It's not cripplingly heartbreaking, but there is enough emotion in this that I would suggest watching it when you're feeling maybe not quite fragile, because it does have some scenes that are rather emotional. But it's a lovely film. It's very well done. Mostly likeable characters, a narrative that flows really well. The pacing is great. The development of the narrative is great. And ultimately, I have no complaints. I thought Love Takes Flight was a really enjoyable film, and one that I'm definitely happy to recommend.